We are going to be continuing our notes on page 66, which is factoring quadratics. I believe questions 8 and 9 you guys were supposed to try on your own. So for tomorrow, make sure you have question 1, 6, 8, 9 because I'm going to be checking for those. And also whichever ones we don't do for b equals 0 today, which I'm thinking I'm going to go over 2 and then you guys will have to do the other one on your own. So turning to page 66. Let's start off with the easy one. Let's start off with number 10, which is x squared minus 1. Notice how the title for this specific row is b equals 0. So what do you think that means? In this case, it means that I don't have a b. Notice how, remember we talked about in the beginning that our standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. So we have an a, we have a term that has the x squared portion. In this case, our a is equal to 1. We don't have something with a b though, right? And so that's kind of the same thing as saying 0x, right? 0 times x is 0. It's the same thing as not having it. So in this case, b equals 0. And c is our constant. So we get c equals negative 81. I'm going to erase this extra stuff here just so it's not in the way. Okay. So let me write this. This is the same as x squared plus 0x minus 81. It's the same thing. And so once we know that, we can continue doing what we've been doing. So you guys should be getting pretty good at this by now. I need to find a number that multiplies to give me 8 times c, but adds to give me b. And so since b equals 0, we know this is 0. 8 times c is negative 81. So what two things can we add together that are going to give us negative 81, but add to give us 0? And so this is where we list our factor pairs. We would say, oh, factor pairs of 81 is 1 and 81. And then we would go through and list all the possible factor pairs. But in this case, since I know when I add them, it has to be 0, then it has to be 9 and negative 9 because those are opposites. When I add them, they're going to add to give me 0. They're the inverse of one another. So it's got to be 9 and negative 9. Once I do that, let's go ahead and draw our box. Remember, in our box, we're always going to have ax squared here. In this case, it's x squared for this problem. So I'm going to fill that in with x squared. Our c will always go here in this bottom right box. Our c in this problem is negative 81. And then on these diagonals, we have our factor pairs that we just discovered, which are positive 9x and negative 9x. So let's find our GCFs. Starting with the GCF of this first column, x squared and 9x only have an x in common, so I'm going to put an x there. Negative 9x and negative 81 have a negative 9 in common. X squared and negative 9x, again, only have an x in common. And then 9x and negative 81 have a positive 9 in common. And if you're not sure how we get the negatives and the positives, remember, go through and check. Multiply everything together. Make sure that your signs are correct in every box. They are in my box. So I can write down my factor pairs as x minus 9 and x plus 9. And that's my final answer. Let's look at number 11 is going to be for you to try. Let's look at number 12, just because this one's a little bit different. On number 11, I forgot to mention, but always check for GCF. I've already told you guys that. We didn't have a GCF on number 10, which is why we got right to the X method. Okay, on number 12, do we have a GCF? We have an 8 and a 50. Yes, we do. We know for sure because they're both even numbers. But is there anything else that divides 8 and 50? Actually, no, never mind. I thought 4 was going to divide 50, but it does not. So no, just 2. So let's go ahead and divide 2 on each term. Don't forget, when you do factor out a GCF, you have to keep it out in the front. Don't forget about it because you're going to bring it along at the very end. 8 divided by 2 is 4x squared. Negative 50 divided by 2 is negative 25. From here, equals 4, b equals 0, c equals negative 25. Now I'm going to go ahead and create my x. I need to find a number that multiplies to give me a times c, which is negative, a times c, which is negative 100, but adds to give me b, which is 0. And so I know in order for them to add to give me 0, they have to be opposites. And the only pair of opposites I know I can use that are going to give me 100 is going to be a negative 10 and a positive 10. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our box. In our first square, we're always going to put our first term, our ax squared term, which in this case is 4x squared. Use the one that you simplified. Okay, don't use the one in the very beginning. And then our c term is going to go here. So in this case, we get negative 25. In our diagonals, we're going to have negative 10x and positive 10x because those are our factor pairs that we found over here. Okay, so let's find our GCFs. For this first column, 4x squared and negative 10x, they have an x in common, and they also have a 2 in common because both of them are divisible by 2. 10x and negative 25, they don't have any x's in common, but I do know that 5 divides both of them. So that is their greatest common factor. Now dealing with the rows, the first row, 4x squared and positive 10x. Again, these have a 2x in common. And then negative 10x and negative 25, these have a negative 5 in common. Again, go through and multiply everything to make sure that it's correct. I know that this is correct. So I'm going to write my final answer as 2 parentheses 2x plus 5, close parentheses, and then another parentheses with 2x minus 5. And that is our final answer. Okay, so don't forget, do whichever ones we have not done together. Do that before working on your worksheet. Okay, sorry guys, I'm at home. You can probably hear my son screaming. So do whichever ones we have not done. Try them. If you have a question, just at least show me that you attempted it, and we'll answer questions on Tuesday. But make sure that they are all, at least that you tried them all, in order to get your stamp on Tuesday. Okay, and then you can move on to the worksheet. Do not worry about having to complete the worksheet. Just get started on it and turn in whatever you have by the end of the period today. All right, guys, see you tomorrow.